A young Lance Corporal mocked an elderly man's lapel pin that read, "Iron Ghost," laughing and calling it a fake video game name in front of everyone. But the old man didn't defend himself. He just stood up with trembling hands and walked toward the exit without saying a word. What the arrogant Marine didn't know was that this quiet 72-year-old had saved 43 men in Vietnam, and what happened next would leave everyone in tears. Before we dive in, tell us in comments where in the world you are watching from. The hotel ballroom was almost empty. Just a few Marines in dress blues were setting up tables for tonight's ceremony. The Marine Corps birthday ball, the biggest night of the year. Lance Corporal Jake Mitchell stood by the bar with his buddies. He was 21 and had been in the Corps for 2 years. He did one easy deployment guarding an embassy overseas. Nothing dangerous, nothing real. But tonight he felt like a hero in that uniform. He was telling stories and laughing loud. His friends were eating it up. Then an old man walked in. He looked about 70 years old with silver hair and a wrinkled face. His dark suit looked worn and old. He moved slowly and stiffly, like his body hurt with every step. He wore several lapel pins on his jacket, military decorations. One of them said "Iron Ghost," with some kind of insignia underneath it. The old man sat down at a corner table by himself. There were 2 chairs, but nobody was with him. He just stared at that empty chair across from him and didn't talk to anyone or look around. Jake saw the pin and grinned. He elbowed his buddy and said, "Yo, check out Grandpa's gamer tag." His friends snickered with uncomfortable laughs. Jake got louder and said, "Iron Ghost? What is that? His Xbox Live name?" More nervous laughs came from the group. The old man didn't react at all. He just kept staring at that empty chair. Jake felt bold and walked over with confident steps and a big smile on his face. "Hey, sir, real talk. Where'd you get that call sign? That's some Call of Duty stuff, right?" The room went completely quiet. The senior Marines who were setting up the front tables stopped what they were doing. They turned around and watched. The old man said nothing and didn't even look up at Jake. Jake pushed harder and asked, "Come on, man! Iron Ghost? Did you just make that up or what?" A voice cut through the room, hard and sharp. "Lance Corporal, get back to your table now." It was Gunnery Sergeant Martinez, standing 30 feet away with a face like stone. But Jake couldn't stop now, not in front of his friends. "I'm just asking. It seems kind of—" The old man stood up fast and sudden. His whole body went rigid. He didn't look at Jake or anyone else. He just walked toward the exit with his hands shaking. The old man's name was Thomas Garrett. He was 72 years old. Earlier that day, his daughter had called him. Her voice was soft and careful, the way people talk when they're worried about you. "Dad, are you sure you want to go tonight?" she asked. "You know it's hard on you every year." Thomas stood in his small apartment and looked at the dark suit laid out on his bed. "I promised Danny I'd never miss it," he said quietly. There was silence on the other end of the line. His daughter knew better than to argue. Thomas had been going to the Marine Corps birthday ball for 50 years, every single year. And every year he sat at the same table with 2 seats, one for him, one for the friend who would never sit in it again. Danny Reeves, his best friend, his teammate, the man who died in his arms in 1971 in a jungle halfway around the world. Thomas's apartment was plain and simple. No flags on the walls, no medals in display cases, no photos of him in uniform. Most veterans filled their homes with memories. Thomas kept his hidden. But Thomas didn't see it as an honor. He saw it as a scar. The last mission was the one that broke him, the one where Danny died. That was the day Thomas stopped talking about the war. He spent the next 50 years trying to honor the men who didn't come home without glorifying the violence that took them. Tonight, like every year, he would sit at that table. He would stare at that empty chair. And he would remember. Thomas walked toward the exit, but Jake's voice followed him across the room. "Come on, man, I'm just curious. Where do guys even get fake call signs like that? Online?" A few junior Marines laughed nervously. They knew something was wrong, but they didn't know what. Gunnery Sergeant Martinez slammed his hand down on the table. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. "Lance Corporal Mitchell, shut your damn mouth and get outside, right now." But Jake couldn't back down now. Not in front of his friends. His pride wouldn't let him. "What?" Jake said, throwing his hands up. "I'm just saying it sounds made up. Real operators don't call themselves stuff like Iron Ghost. That's Hollywood nonsense." Another young Marine next to him whispered urgently, "Dude, stop, you don't know—" Jake cut him off. "Know what? That old guys show up to these things with fake war stories? I actually deployed. I actually served. I'm just calling out—" Thomas stopped walking. He stood at the doorway, with his hand gripping the frame. His knuckles were white. His whole body was tense, like he was holding something back that wanted to explode. Then the side door opened. An older Marine walked in. He wore dress blues with rows of ribbons on his chest. A full colonel. Probably in his 60s. His hair was gray. His jaw was set. And he carried himself like someone who had seen things. He took 2 steps into the room and froze. His eyes locked on Thomas standing at the door. His face went pale. For a moment, he just stared. Then he looked at Jake. Then back at Thomas. His expression changed fast, from shock to something that looked like horror and fury mixed together. The colonel crossed the room in seconds. His boots hit the floor hard with every step. He stopped right in front of Jake and looked down at him. "Who the hell are you?" His voice was like gravel scraping on concrete. Jake straightened up instinctively. "Lance Corporal Mitchell, sir. I was just—" The colonel cut him off. "You were just disrespecting a Marine who earned that call sign in blood while you were still in diapers." Jake's face flickered with confusion. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. The colonel turned away from him and looked at Thomas. His voice softened, but only a little. "Master Sergeant Garrett, it's been a long time." Thomas nodded slightly but didn't say anything. The colonel turned back to Jake. His voice dropped lower, quieter, but somehow more dangerous. "Do you know what MACV-SOG is, Lance Corporal?" Jake stammered. Special Operations? Vietnam, I think?" The colonel nodded slowly. "Studies and Observations Group. Reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines. The most classified, most dangerous operations of the entire war." He paused and let that sink in. Then he leaned forward slightly. "And you just mocked one of the men who ran those missions." The room went completely silent. Every Marine in that ballroom, junior and senior, stopped what they were doing and watched. Some of the older Marines had their hands over their mouths. Some looked angry. Some looked like they wanted to cry. Jake stood there frozen. His face was pale now. His confidence was gone. Gunny Martinez stood up from his table and walked closer. He pulled out his phone and started typing fast, searching for something. The colonel wasn't done. He stared at Jake with eyes that had seen war. "That man you just insulted saved 43 Marines in 1971, including me." Jake's legs looked like they might give out. The colonel stepped closer to Jake. His voice was measured and controlled, but it felt lethal. "My name is Colonel Richard Hayes," he said. "In 1971, I was a second lieutenant leading a Marine recon platoon near the DMZ. We got compromised on a mission, ambushed by NVA regulars. 43 men pinned down. No air support, no artillery. Command wrote us off. Jake's arrogance crumbled. His face went pale. Hayes continued, his eyes never leaving Jake's face. Master Sergeant Garrett wasn't even assigned to our mission. He was running a separate operation 15 kilometers away with his SOG team. But when he heard our distress call on the radio, he diverted. Against orders. Against protocol. Thomas still hadn't turned around. His back was to the room, his shoulders rigid like stone. Hayes kept talking, and his voice cracked slightly. He and his spotter, a Marine named Danny Reeves, moved through 15 kilometers of enemy-controlled jungle in the middle of the night. Alone. No backup. When they reached our position, we were out of ammo. Half my men were wounded. We were preparing for a final stand. Gunny Martinez had his phone out now. He was searching for something fast, his fingers moving quickly across the screen. Then he found it. A scanned military document. He held up the phone so others could see. It showed a black and white photograph of 2 young Marines in camouflage, with their faces painted. Next to it was a commendation that read, Navy Cross and Thomas Garrett, Master Sergeant. Hayes's voice dropped to almost a whisper now. They called him Iron Ghost, because he moved through that jungle like he didn't exist. Silent, invisible, unstoppable. He took out an enemy machine gun nest single-handedly, cleared a path for medevac, held the line while we evacuated the wounded. Thomas's hands were shaking now. He still hadn't turned around, but everyone could see his shoulders moving with each breath. Hayes looked back at Jake. His expression was somewhere between pity and disgust. You want to know where he got that call sign, Lance Corporal? His men gave it to him, the ones he saved. The ones who watched him refuse to quit when any sane man would have run. Jake looked like he might collapse. His face was red now, his eyes wet. Hayes wasn't finished. Master Sergeant Garrett ran 37 missions behind enemy lines. 37, each one more dangerous than the last. He brought his team home every single time. Colonel Hayes's voice hardened. But the story doesn't end there, does it, Master Sergeant? Thomas finally turned around. His eyes were wet, but his face was stone. Hayes continued, looking directly at Jake now. During the final extraction, an RPG hit one of the helicopters. It went down 200 meters from the landing zone. 3 Marines trapped inside, enemy closing in fast. The room was frozen. You could hear a pin drop. Thomas and Danny went back, Hayes said. Again, no orders, no backup, just 2 men against an entire platoon of NVA soldiers. Hayes paused. His own eyes were glistening now. They reached the downed chopper, got the crew out, started moving back to the LZ under heavy fire. But on the way back, he stopped, swallowed hard. Danny took a round through the chest, went down 30 meters from the tree line. Thomas closed his eyes. A tear rolled down his weathered cheek. Hayes's voice cracked. Thomas carried him, under fire, across open ground with bullets hitting all around him. He took 2 rounds himself, one through the shoulder, one through the leg. But he didn't stop. He didn't leave Danny behind. He got him to the helicopter and held him the entire flight to the field hospital. Another tear fell down Thomas's face. Hayes finished quietly. Danny died before they landed. Thomas held him in his arms and told him he'd never miss a Marine Corps birthday ball, that he'd keep the promise for both of them. And he has. For 50 years. The room was completely silent. Several Marines were crying now. Some of the older ones had their heads down. Some had their hands over their faces. Jake looked like he was about to collapse. His whole body was shaking. Thomas finally spoke. His voice was hoarse, and barely above a whisper. I don't talk about that name, son, because the man who earned it killed people. Good men died so I could live. Danny died in my arms because I didn't move fast enough. He looked at Jake with something between exhaustion and pity. You wear that uniform. Good. Be proud of it. But don't you ever assume you understand what someone else has carried, especially the ones who stay quiet. Jake's face collapsed. Tears were streaming down his cheeks now. He snapped to attention instinctively, his body rigid. Master Sergeant, I'm so sorry, Jake choked out. I had no right. I disrespected you, Danny, and every Marine who... His voice broke. He couldn't finish. Thomas stood there for a long moment, looking at this young Marine who thought he knew what war was, who thought 2 years and a safe deployment made him a warrior. Thomas stepped forward and placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. His grip was firm but gentle. You made a mistake, son, Thomas said quietly. We all do, but you're here. You're wearing that uniform. That means something. Jake looked up, his face red and wet with tears. His voice shook. I don't deserve to wear it after what I... Thomas cut him off gently. Yes, you do. You just learned something most Marines never learn this early. Respect isn't about rank or ribbons. It's about humility, and the quietest men in the room are often the ones who've bled the most. Jake saluted. It was crisp, sharp, and genuine. Thomas returned it just as precisely. Something passed between them in that moment. Forgiveness. Colonel Hayes stepped forward. Master Sergeant Garrett, would you do us the honor of sitting at the head table tonight, next to the guest of honor chair? Thomas shook his head. No, sir. I sit with Danny. Same table. Every year. Hayes nodded. He understood. The ceremony began. Thomas sat at his corner table with 2 place settings and 1 empty chair. Throughout the night, Marines of every rank stopped by his table. They shook his hand. They thanked him. Some just stood there silently for a moment, then walked away. Near the end of the night, Jake approached the table. He didn't say anything. He just placed a handwritten note on Danny's empty plate, saluted one more time, and walked away. Later, Thomas read it. Master Sergeant Garrett and Corporal Reeves, thank you for teaching me what it really means to be a Marine. I'll never forget. Semper Fi. LCPL Mitchell. Thomas folded the note carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. When the ceremony ended, he stood up slowly and walked toward the exit. The cool night air hit his face as he stepped outside. He looked up at the stars for a moment, then walked to his car. Respect isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. Real heroes don't tell their stories. They live with them in silence. And sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is listen before we speak, because the warriors who've sacrificed the most often say the least.